Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. What I hope to do in this short video is to use an observation, a single observation from our first week in Advent to show you how you can use the Bible Study Workbook to walk through the Bible study method. So let me walk you through what I have up here on the board and kind of the interior of the Bible Study Workbook if you're newer to this tool. So up here in the top, we have a section for words and phrases. That's not up here on the board because for every observation, you might not necessarily use every part of the Bible Study Workbook, okay? So I'll explain that. But the words, phrases up here, so those are words and phrases that we want to define, that seems significant, that we want to know more about, or that we just simply don't understand. Okay, and then down here, there's a box for theology and narrative. We do have that up here. So that is anything pertaining to theology. So who is God and what is he doing? And then narrative, so the grand redemptive narrative of the Bible. So those are just reminders for you that we need to be paying attention to things that are theologically significant, that are, and also thinking through where we're at within redemptive narrative and how that might play a role in the things that we are understanding and learning and seeing how Revelation is unfolding throughout the history of God's people and God's world. And then we have a column here for scribble. So that's this section here, literally a scribble. That is kind of for whatever you need it to be. So it's to draw out conclusions, draw out implications, ask questions, write out prayers, kind of whatever you need that space to be. And then over here up at the top, we have connections, which we do have up on here. So those are, most often I personally use them for cross references, but it can also be another way to draw connections. So it can overlap a little bit with that narrative piece. Then you have a spot to summarize the meaning of the passage and to work through some application. And then another column for scribble. So whatever, again, you need it to be, whatever you need that extra space for. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, for every observation, you might not necessarily use every single box. So the observation that we're going to use today as our example, so again, it's going to be a single observation from our week 1 in Advent. I'm going to show you that observation. I'm going to walk you through an example of how I can use the study method process in the Bible study workbook specifically to organize figuring out the meaning and implications of that particular observation. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so the example observation that we're going to use is the Spirit. So if you've read the passage, then you know that there are multiple mentions of the Spirit and aspects of the Spirit. So that should automatically kind of pause us and think to ourselves, this is theological in nature. This is the third person of the Trinity. This is about God, something he is doing, something about who he is. And so we need to, we want to make sure that we're pausing and paying attention to what is written here. So that's what I might write under theology and narrative. In that section, I might just write the Spirit, box it, and then I'm going to start I'm going to start asking questions about it. Okay, so let me write that up here for you and we'll talk about it. Okay, so what I did after just making that title is I just went a little bit further with observation, asked myself, okay, what am I plainly seeing in the passage about the Spirit? Like, what is being mentioned? It's multiple things, so that automatically in my head triggers, oh, maybe I should make a list to just wrap my brain around what I'm seeing here. And so that's kind of what I did. I did pull out that specifically says that the Spirit is on him, which I think is significant language, which I'll talk about in a second. But then I just made the list of what are all the aspects of the Spirit that is mentioned in this passage, which again, it just helps you sit longer in the passage and sit longer in that observation to really not blow over it, okay? And then so something that we can do then is once we kind of sit on that observation, ask ourselves what specifically about this observation am I seeing, which is more observation. Then there's a couple of things that could happen that maybe you could use the scribble section for other areas. So as we grow in familiarity with the Bible, sometimes when we're writing stuff like this and sitting in observation, there might be things that automatically come to mind that you already know about other parts of scripture or about that just particular biblical concept, whatever it is. Or what you can do then is you can start consulting secondary resources in order to help kind of flesh out this observation. So maybe you're looking at the Spirit, you're looking at all these aspects of it, and you're just like, I don't have any thoughts. You're reading the whole passage, you're looking at context and the rest of the content, and you're trying to figure out, what do I need to know about this? Why is this significant? Okay, so maybe a secondary resource helps get you there. Okay, so this is how you could then use the scribble section. When I was reading this, and I thought about specifically on him, my mind triggered to Jesus' baptism, where the Spirit descended on him. and the Father approved of the Son. So a really significant event in Jesus' life and the start of his ministry. So when I read on him, that just immediately stood out to me. So I was like, that's prophetic. Like this actually, we see this happen when Jesus comes. When Jesus comes, we see it happen. Okay, so that's something that I might go then into the scribble, where I want to draw out more thought, more meaning. So that's something that I would write here then. Okay, so in the scribble section, I have that the Spirit descends on Jesus at his baptism, and as he goes into his earthly ministry, but then also him just growing up in his humanity, he is growing in all of these things. But specifically, when the Spirit descends on him throughout his ministry, he is growing in wisdom, growing in understanding, growing in counsel, might, knowledge, and fear of the Lord. These aspects. Okay, so that's written on here. So then how would we possibly use maybe connections? Okay, so maybe as you're seeking more information about these aspects of the Spirit, maybe you come across a cross-reference, which is what happened to me. So maybe I box this and go up to connections, and I realize that in Revelation, right here I'm going to put Revelation 1:4, but I think it's actually mentioned maybe 2 other times in Revelation, that this is actually, if you count them all up, that there is 7 aspects of the Spirit here, which is really significant, because in Revelation it actually talks about the 7 spirits of God. So that's something that I could write here as a cross-reference to further draw out the meaning of the Spirit in this passage. Okay, so then once you have that up here, you can just keep sitting in it. So maybe once you realize that there is even more of a reason, there are these things, 7 things mentioned here, then maybe you realize, maybe I want to sit a little bit longer in what each of these things actually mean pertaining to Jesus, the promise, who Jesus is, his ministry, and what does it mean? What is that further telling us about him? So that is something that you could do in the scribble section. So you could start listing it out. You can do wisdom. Okay, and then you can start reading and doing more information on what does it mean that Jesus is wise and he's full of wisdom, and then what is that? How does that change or affect the way that we view him and his interaction with us and things like that? So that's a way then that you could use that scribble section. So a very quick, short example, but I hope that that's helpful, how you can use the Bible Study Workbook, the setup of the interior, to move through the Bible study process, and how it is giving you space to work all of that out without losing where you're at or getting overwhelmed with all the content. So you're following, you're starting with an observation, and you're following the things that you are finding, the things that you are concluding. And what's neat too is as you keep going in observation, so maybe you keep adding things to the theology narrative stuff, other observations will start to connect with each other too. So maybe there's another observation here with more implication that like gives you more insight into all these aspects of the Spirit, things like that. There's just so much connection all throughout Scripture for how things work together and things that we're learning about God. And so that's what's beautiful about being able to kind of organize the process a little bit. But okay, I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, drop them below. Happy to answer it. Let me know if this is helpful, and we'll keep doing more.